So Star Wars Catalyst, a Rogue One story, has dropped. Is it a good book? Is it worth reading? Does it give us some good bits leading into Rogue One? Let's talk about it. So Star Wars Catalyst tells the story of Orson Krennic as well as Galen Erso, and at the core of the story really is the relationship between these two characters and how a military man convinces a pacifist researcher to end up developing a weapon that kind of is used in the Death Star. And very much so, it sets the stage for Rogue One. Now, of course, we don't know how much it does that. We don't know how many really good bits are in this book because we haven't seen Rogue One yet. But just from reading it, just from without knowing the movie we're going to see, it feels like they gave us a ton of information, a ton of backstory for a book coming out before the movie comes out. The book starts during the Clone Wars, and it takes place over quite a few years. I don't know if it's entirely defined how many years take place, but definitely years go by as you see the relationship evolve, as you see the politics and the world around them change, and you see a lot of really neat bits in this movie. So, the big question, is it any good? What I will say is there's a ton of background information about the government of the Old Republic, about the perception of the Jedi, about the lore of the Kyber crystals, about the background of Tarkin and the Death Star and how these different things come together. Like, you learn a lot of information about how the pieces come together that's all very interesting. With that said, the story that's told bringing all this together is so thin. And by that, I mean, there's kind of a lot of moving pieces, but, you know, I could really summarize the key pieces to it very easily of like where you start, what happens in the middle, and then what happens in the end. It's pretty simplistic at its core, and it's not that interesting, really. I mean, in fact, as I was going through it, one of my coworkers was asking me like, hey, how was it? And I was like, well, you know, it's like a lot of interesting information. It's a lot of interesting backstory, but there's not really a story to it. And in the last kind of third of it, actually less than that, I mean, the last 15% of it, it starts to kind of give a conclusion where you can see how there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. But really, at the end of the day, it felt like this last 15% needed to be more like the last 40% of it. That's kind of where, if that had been the pacing of it, you get the first third is about right, and then you have this gigantic middle act that just, it felt like it wasn't going anywhere. And it was information you didn't need. It was just it was like a couple of chapters worth of like interesting stuff about research and the world and the politics going on. And then it was just information you don't care about. And this person's over here and they're going on over here and this happened here. And the purpose of it really is just to give you the passage of time and show you lots of like how big the story is. But it wasn't very interesting. And so then you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, okay, things are getting exciting. All right, this is it. I like where this is going. This is setting things up. Okay, very interesting. Oh, we're done. And so that's kind of my overall feeling of it. Lots of interesting information, very interesting kind of dynamics. Feel like they're giving us a ton of backstory leading into this movie, but they didn't really give me a story that pulled me in. Great beginning, great end. In the middle, really just meandered and had lots of information and not a lot of story. As for the characters, I felt like Krennic was essentially the character I thought he was. I didn't feel like I got a bunch of really big, interesting insights. And that's not like a knock on the character. It's just to say that a whole book of like backstory about him, and all I really ended up feeling was like, okay, he's like I thought he was. Galen Erso, they gave us some information that very much I got a different take on him. But I guess maybe to say that he's not a great protagonist for a story. He's not a character that's that interesting to drive a full story. He's much more the character that makes sense as he is, I'm assuming, in Rogue One, which is a side character that kind of drives action. And so that once again kind of ties into why maybe this story wasn't all that enthralling to me, is that him as a lead character wasn't that interesting. And it's really co-leads. You're really following both of their careers. But kind of, I felt like we kept them at a bit of a distance in the story. It wasn't like we really understood them and were tracking with either one of them. It was just kind of we're hearing about what's going on and what they're feeling, but not really feeling like we're in their mind and getting their perspective on the take on things. Because the way the story is told is it's told very much from the omniscient narrator's perspective of he knows everyone's side of things. And so I didn't feel like I really got to know either one of them while getting to see a lot of what happens with each of them. Without spoiling anything, I want to give you an idea of the good bits that are in this story and what's not in this story. So if you're looking for some good backstory about the characters of Krennic and Galen Erso, that's what you get. You get to see a lot about them, their backstory, their relationship, what was going on with them. That is the plot of this movie. As well as Galen's wife, Lyra, you find out a whole lot about her. You don't get a whole bunch about Jyn Erso, but it's just because she's so young in it. She's throughout the whole story, and you get pieces about her, but she's so young, it's not like she's on adventures, and so you're getting this wonderful backstory, but you're getting the backstory of her family. Likewise, if you want basically a perspective of what the transition within the government there from the old republic to the empire, very much you get that in here. The perspective of some scientists, as well as kind of the perspective of someone that believes in the Force, that's kind of a member of the religion of the Force. What are their perspectives on what kind of transpired with the Jedi? And you get a lot of that in here. What you don't get is we're not tracking along with Darth Vader. We're not tracking along with any Jedi. We're not tracking along. So that's not what this story is all about. We're seeing this perspective from Galen Erso and from Orson Krennic. And if that's interesting to you, then this is a book that would be worth your time. It's not as great as I was hoping. The first third of it made me think, oh man, this is going to be awesome. And then it was kind of like, okay, I guess you didn't have a bunch of story to tell. You just had a great intro and a great end, and then a bunch of exposition. And so that's a good idea of the expectations of what you can expect from this book. So I recommend this book if you're a big Star Wars fan. It doesn't embarrass things. If you like the books, I wouldn't recommend this as a starting point, but if you're a fan, certainly check it out. If you're looking forward to Rogue One and you want to know everything you can know, you'll learn a lot of backstory in this. So I don't know how much it ties into the movie, but you certainly learn a lot about these characters, what's going on, about the nature of how the Death Star works. You learn about that in this book. But as a story in and of itself, I just can't really recommend it on that level, because the story's just not very engaging. It's well written. Each part of it is put together well. Just the overall story doesn't have enough weight to it, primarily because where they could have really had some good, meaty tension, urgency to it is just the last 15, or not, like 15% of it. I don't know how many pages or whatever, but that last little bit of it. And if that had been like the whole third act, this could have been a much stronger story. So what about you? What did you think about Catalyst? Is this one you're really pumped about and want to check out as soon as possible? Or are you holding out a little bit and kind of want to wait until after Rogue One so nothing is spoiled? Just so you know, this book probably is giving us more about Rogue One, or gave me more about Rogue One probably than I wanted to know before seeing the movie. There's a lot in there when it comes to backstory about these characters. What do you think? Tell me in the comment section. I would love to hear from you, because I don't want to just talk about Star Wars. I want to talk about Star Wars with you. As always, thank you for watching. Oh, hey, you're still here. That's awesome. I just wanted to let you know, while you were watching this video, I buried a bag of gold in your backyard. And here's all you need to do to know how to find that bag of gold is either click the subscribe button or check out one of these other videos wherever they are. If you do that, I will email you a map to the buried treasure in your backyard, since you wouldn't be able to see the overturned dirt. Thank you so much for watching, and I want to give you a bag of gold, so please click subscribe or check out one of my other videos.